The transport ship dropped through the purple atmosphere of Veridax Prime like a stone falling into dark water. Inside the small cargo bay, Una sat perfectly still. Her hands rested on her knees. Her breathing was slow and steady. She wore simple gray clothing and light boots. A single pack sat beside her feet. Nothing about her looked dangerous. Nothing about her looked like a hunter. The pilot, a four-armed Quellan Namedrevik, kept glancing at the scanner readings. He had flown hundreds of mercenaries and soldiers to this cursed planet. They always came loaded with weapons, armor, scanning equipment. They always talked big, made threats, promised violence. This human girl brought almost nothing. She said nothing at all. You know what's down there, right? Revik's voice crackled through the speaker. 7 of the most dangerous war criminals in Quellan history. They've killed hundreds. Some of them are over 300 years old. They know every trick, every tactic. Una nodded once. Her dark eyes stayed focused on the viewport. The Council sent 12 teams before you. Kravik's warriors. Thorian commandos. Even a pack of Rendic hunters. Revik's claws tapped nervously on the controls. None came back. Not one. Another nod. Still no words. The ship landed on a metal platform at the edge of the forest. The trees here were massive, their trunks thicker than buildings. The canopy blocked out most of the light. Strange sounds echoed through the darkness. Clicking, howling, things that didn't sound like any animal. Revik knew. Lord Vikrin waited on the platform. He was tall, even for a Quellan, with deep red skin and 4 muscular arms. Golden armor covered his chest. 300 years of military command showed in every movement. He watched the human girl step off the transport with obvious disappointment on his face. This is the Council's answer? His voice boomed across the platform. A child? Taiho, the human liaison officer, stepped forward quickly. He was nervous. His hands moved too much when he talked. Sir, Una has completed 47 successful tracking missions. Her record is, I can read reports. Vekrin cut him off. His 4 eyes studied Una from head to toe. But I see no weapons, no armor, no communication equipment. Does she even speak? Taiheo opened his mouth, then closed it. He looked at Una, who remained completely still. She communicates through. Other means, Taiheo finally said. Other means. Vekrin laughed. It was a harsh sound, like rocks grinding together. The criminals in that forest have killed trained soldiers with decades of experience. They have weapons taken from our armories. They have traps. They hunt for sport. And you send me a mute girl with a backpack? Jin Wu, the human military advisor, crossed his arms. He was older than Taiho, with gray in his hair and scars on his hands. If you don't want her here, we can leave. But you called the Council. You said your people couldn't handle this. Vekrin's skin darkened with anger. We could handle it. We choose not to waste more lives on trash that should have been executed. Then let her work. Jinwoo's voice stayed calm. A technician brought up a holodisplay. It showed the forest in blue light, with red markers scattered throughout. These are the last known positions of the targets. This was 3 days ago. They move constantly. They know we're watching from orbit. They avoid open areas. Some of our scans suggest they're working together now, which makes them even more dangerous. Una stepped closer to the display. She studied it. Her eyes moved across the terrain, the elevation markers, the water sources. She tracked each red dot, noting distances and patterns. 47 seconds passed. Then she nodded, picked up her pack, and walked toward the forest entrance. Wait. Taiho rushed after her. Don't you want to know more? We have detailed files on each target. their fighting styles, their preferences. Their Yuna held up one hand. She pointed at her eyes, then at the forest. Then she made a walking motion with 2 fingers. The meaning was clear enough. She would learn by seeing. "You'll have a tracker on you," Jinwoo said, "for medical monitoring and location. Don't remove it." She nodded again. Then she was gone, disappearing into the shadows between the massive trees, like smoke fading into darkness. Vikrin watched her go, with a mixture of anger and disbelief. "How long do you think she'll survive?" "I give her 6 hours." "You shouldn't underestimate humans," Jinwoo said quietly. "Why not?" "You're weak. Soft skin, dull senses. No natural weapons. I respect your kind for your technology and your diplomacy, but hunting? Tracking? That requires instincts you simply don't have." Vekrin turned back to the command center. "I'll have a recovery team ready to collect her body." Taiho and Jinwoo followed him inside. The command center was filled with monitors showing different views of the forest. Thermal imaging, motion sensors, satellite feeds. Dozens of technicians worked at stations, trying to keep track of the escaped criminals. "Can you actually track her?" Taiho asked one of the technicians. The technician, a young Quellan female, pulled up Yuna's biomonitor. "Yes, her heart rate is steady. 60 beats per minute. She's moving northwest, away from the last known target positions." "Away from them?" Vekrin frowned. "Is she running already?" "No," Jinwoo said. He was looking at a different screen, one showing the terrain map. "She's going to high ground. Getting the layout. Understanding the environment first." Hours passed. Yuna moved through the forest without stopping. She didn't use the paths. She climbed over roots and through thick brush. She paused at water sources, studying the ground. She collected plants and crushed them between her fingers, smelling them, sometimes touching them to her tongue. The technicians watched in confusion. "What is she doing?" one asked. "Learning," Jinwoo answered. By nightfall, Yuna had covered 12 kilometers. She found a thick tree with a hollow high up in the trunk. She climbed up, settled inside, and closed her eyes. Her heart rate dropped even lower. 55 beats per minute. Deep sleep. She's resting? Vekrin couldn't believe it. The targets are active at night. This is when they hunt. "She knows," Taiho said. "Look at her position. She can see 3 different paths from there. If anything moves below, she'll know." The night passed slowly. The monitors showed the targets moving through the forest. They were hunting the local wildlife, testing their weapons, leaving signs of their presence. They wanted to be feared. They wanted others to know they were the predators here, but they didn't know about the small, human girl sleeping in a tree 3 kilometers away. They didn't know she was memorizing every sound, every smell, every pattern in the darkness. They didn't know that silence could be the most dangerous weapon of all. When dawn came, Yuna opened her eyes. She didn't stretch or yawn. She simply looked out at the forest, watching the light change, listening to the morning sounds. Then she climbed down and began moving again. In the command center, Vekrin stared at the monitors. "She's survived the night. I'm almost impressed." "You should be more than almost impressed," Jinwoo said quietly, "because the hunt has just begun." 3 days had passed since Yuna entered the forest. The command center had become quieter with each passing hour. The technicians spoke in whispers now. They watched the monitors like people watching a predator hunt, afraid to make noise, afraid to miss something important. The first target died on the 2nd day. His name was Caliph. He had fought in 30 battles and personally killed over 200 people. He was strong, fast, and cruel. He had thought this planet was his playground. They found his body hanging from a branch 40 meters above the ground. His neck was broken, But that wasn't what killed him. He had triggered a trap so perfectly designed that even the Quellen engineers couldn't understand how it worked at first. A vine had been modified, stripped, and braided with incredible precision. It was set with a trigger mechanism made from sharpened bone and plant fiber. When Kaleth stepped on the pressure point, the trap released with enough force to snap his spine. "This is impossible," one technician said, studying the footage. "She built this trap in the dark, with no tools, using only materials from the forest." Vikram stared at the screen. His 4 hands were clenched into fists. "Where is she now?" "We lost her signal 2 hours ago." The technician looked nervous. "The biomonitor is still working, but we can't pinpoint her location. She's somehow blocking our scanners." "How?" Vekran's voice was dangerous. "We don't know, sir." Taiho leaned forward, studying Yuna's last known heart rate. 58 beats per minute. Steady, calm, like she was taking a walk, not hunting the galaxy's most dangerous criminals. "She's found a way to use the environment to hide from sensors. The trees here have high metal content. She's probably staying close to the trunks, using them as cover." "Clever," Jinwu said. "She's not just hunting them. She's making sure they can't track her either." The second target died that night. His name was Vorath. He was older than Kaleth, more experienced, more careful. He had been a military strategist before he became a war criminal. He understood tactics. He set up motion sensors around his camp. He booby-trapped the approaches. He slept in short intervals, always alert. None of it mattered. They found Vorath in the morning, dead in his sleeping bag. There was one small wound at the base of his skull, perfectly placed to sever the brain stem. Instant death. His motion sensors were still active. His traps were still armed. Yuna had somehow moved through all of it without triggering anything. "Check the wound," Vekran ordered. The medical examiner reviewed the footage from Vorath's body camera. "It's a puncture wound, approximately 3 millimeters wide. It goes straight into the brain stem. The weapon was some kind of bone needle, probably from a local predator." "It was poisoned." "Poisoned?" "Yes, sir. The poison comes from a plant that grows near water sources. It causes instant muscle paralysis." He couldn't even scream. The examiner looked up from his screen. Whoever did this knew exactly where to strike, exactly how deep to push the needle, and exactly which poison to use. This isn't just skill. This is surgical precision. Taiho felt cold. He had read Yuna's file. He knew about her missions. But reading about them was different from watching them happen. She's learning their biology. Every kill teaches her more about how Quellens think and move. The remaining 5 targets started to panic. They had been confident before, even playful. They had left messages in the forest, taunting anyone who might be hunting them. Now they stayed together. They moved in a tight group, weapons ready, eyes scanning every shadow. The 3rd target died anyway. His name was Drexel. He was the youngest, only 90 years old. He had stayed in the middle of the group, thinking he was safest there. They were crossing a stream when he suddenly collapsed. The others rushed to him, but he was already dead. Foam came from his mouth. His eyes were wide with terror. What killed him? One of them shouted, "I don't know. There's no wound." They ran. They abandoned Drexel's body and ran deeper into the forest, crashing through branches, no longer caring about tactics or stealth. They just wanted to get away. In the command center, the technicians were silent. The footage from Drexel's body camera showed nothing. No attack, no shooter. He had just dropped dead. Poison again? Vikram asked. The examiner shook his head. Different kind. This one was in the water. She must have tracked them, predicted where they would cross, and poisoned the stream upstream. She knew exactly how long it would take for the poison to reach that spot. That's impossible. The water flow, the timing, the dosage. Vecren stopped. She would need to calculate dozens of variables. Yes, Jinwoo said. She would. The fourth and fifth targets died together. Their names were Maltos and Krendix. They were brothers, trained together, fought together. They decided to set an ambush. They found a narrow canyon with only one entrance and one exit. They positioned themselves at both ends. Anyone trying to pass through would be caught in their crossfire. They waited for 3 hours. Then the rocks started falling. It wasn't a landslide. It was too controlled for that. Specific rocks fell at specific times, blocking the exits, trapping them inside. Then came the smoke. Yuna had set fires upwind, using green wood that created thick, choking smoke. The smoke poured into the canyon like water, filling a cup. Maltos and Krendix tried to climb out, but the walls were slick with some kind of plant oil. They slipped and fell. The smoke got thicker. They couldn't breathe. They fired their weapons blindly, hoping to hit something, anything. When the smoke finally cleared, they were both dead, suffocated. Their weapons were empty. They had never even seen their hunter. She turned the environment into a weapon, Taihyo said quietly. She used the terrain, the wind, the plants, everything. Vecren sat down heavily in his chair. His confidence was gone. His mockery had turned to something else. Respect, maybe. Or fear. 5 targets dead in 3 days. No direct combat. No wasted effort. Every move was calculated. Where is she now? Jinwoo asked. The technician checked his screen. Her biomonitor is active again. She's resting near the northern ridge. Heart rate is normal. She's eating something? Eating? Vecren looked surprised. Yes, sir. Her blood sugar levels are rising. She's consuming food. Taihyo almost laughed. She's having a meal, while being hunted by the 2 remaining targets. She's that confident. The remaining 2 targets, brothers named Kelver and Thane, were the most dangerous of all. They had been generals in the Quellan military. They had commanded armies. They had destroyed entire colonies. They were over 300 years old and had never been defeated in direct combat. They knew they couldn't run. They knew they couldn't hide. So they decided to do the only thing they could think of. They would force a confrontation. We'll make her come to us, Kelver said. His voice was recorded on the satellite feed. In open ground, where we have the advantage. We'll end this. Thane nodded. She's good in the shadows. Good with tricks. But in a straight fight, she's just a human. Weak, slow. We'll crush her. They chose a clearing near the center of the forest. A wide open space where nothing could hide. They set up in the middle, back to back, weapons ready. They had plasma rifles taken from the Quellan armory. They had combat exoskeletons that enhanced their already formidable strength. And they waited. In the command center, everyone watched the screens. Yuna's biomonitor showed she was moving, coming toward the clearing. Her heart rate was rising slightly. 65 beats per minute. Still incredibly calm for someone about to face 2 of the deadliest warriors in the galaxy. She's going to accept their challenge, Vecren said. She's going to fight them head on. No, Jinwoo said. She's going to end this. But not the way they expect. The sun was beginning to rise. The first light of dawn touched the edge of the clearing. Kelver and Thane stood ready, their sensors scanning for any movement. And from the shadows, Yuna emerged. Lord Vecren couldn't look away from the screens. His 4 hands gripped the edge of the console so tightly that the metal began to bend. Around him, every technician in the command center had stopped working. They all watched the same feed. The clearing. The two brothers. The small human girl who walked out of the darkness like a ghost becoming solid.yuna, carried a simple bow made from wood and vine. A quiver of arrows hung at her hip. A knife was strapped to her leg. That was all. No armor. No enhancement technology. No plasma weapons. Just ancient tools that humans had used for thousands of years. She's insane, Vikran whispered. Kelver and Thane have military-grade weapons. They're wearing combat exoskeletons. One shot from those rifles will turn her into ash. Maybe, Jinwoo said. His eyes never left the screen. Or maybe she knows something we don't. Taiho pulled up Yuna's file on a separate display. He had read it before, but now he read it again, slowly looking for clues. It says here that she survived a Quellan raid when she was 8 years old. The raiders attacked a human colony on Tarsus IV. I remember that raid, Vikran said quietly. It was unauthorized? The soldiers responsible were executed. It was a dark moment for our people. Yuna was the only survivor from her settlement. She hid in a storage bunker for 6 days, while the raiders hunted for survivors above her. She couldn't make a sound. If she had cried or called out, they would have found her. Taiho's voice was soft. When the rescue team finally arrived, she hadn't spoken a word. The doctors said it was trauma. But she never spoke again, even after therapy. And now she hunts our war criminals, Vikran said. I suppose that makes sense. It's more than revenge, Jinwoo said. Look at how she works. Every move is calculated. Every kill is precise. She doesn't just want them dead. She wants them to know they were beaten. By a human. By someone they would have dismissed as weak. In the clearing, Kelver laughed. It was a deep, rumbling sound that echoed across the open space. You're the hunter? You're what killed our brothers? He raised his plasma rifle. You're nothing but a child playing with sticks. Yuna didn't respond. She simply stood there, 30 meters away, studying them. Her eyes moved from Kelver to Thane, noting their positions, their weapons, the way they held themselves. She was reading them like books written in a language only she understood. Speak, Thane shouted. Say something before you die. Still nothing. Yuna reached back and drew an arrow from her quiver. She knocked it to her bowstring in one smooth motion. The movement was so fluid, so practiced, that it looked like a single gesture. She's going to shoot, Vikran said. But arrows can't penetrate combat exoskeletons. Even if she hits them, it won't do anything. Kelver apparently thought the same thing. He lowered his rifle slightly, amused. Go ahead. Try it. Let me show you how useless, Yuna released. The arrow flew across the clearing, faster than most people could track. It didn't hit Kelver. It didn't hit Thane. It struck the ground between them, exactly in the center of their formation. Nothing happened for a moment. Then the arrow exploded, not with fire or concussions, with spores. A cloud of thick yellow spores burst from the arrow shaft, covering both brothers in a fine powder. They stumbled back, coughing, trying to wipe the powder from their faces. What is this? Kelver shouted. His words came out strange, slurred. What did you? His legs buckled. Thane tried to raise his rifle, but his arms wouldn't respond. They both collapsed to their knees, their combat exoskeletons suddenly useless. The motors were still running, but their own bodies wouldn't obey their commands. Paralytic spores, the medical examiner said in the command center. He was checking the biological readings from the clearing, from a local fungus. She must have harvested them and concentrated them somehow. The combat exoskeletons are sealed, but she knew they would open their faceplates to shout at her. That's when the spores got in. She planned that, Taiho said. She knew they would underestimate her. She knew they would talk instead of shooting. Immediately, she used their arrogance against them. Yuna walked forward slowly. She didn't hurry. She knocked another arrow and kept it ready, but she didn't aim it at the brothers. She was watching them carefully, making sure the paralysis was complete. When she reached them, she knelt down and looked into Kelver's eyes. Kelver could still see, still hear, still understand. He just couldn't move. His mouth worked silently, trying to form words, but only gasping sounds came out. Yuna studied him for a long moment. Then she reached into her pack and pulled out a small slate and a piece of charcoal. She wrote something on it and held it up so Kelver could read it. "What does it say?" Vekrin demanded. "Zoom in on that slate." The technician enhanced the image. The words were written in Quellan script, shaky but readable. "You killed my family on Tarsus 4. You thought we were nothing. You were wrong." Kelver's eyes went wide. Recognition, horror, understanding. He tried to speak again, but no words came. Yuna put the slate away. She stood up and looked at Thane, who was frozen in the same state. Then she did something unexpected. She put away her weapons. The bow went across her back. The arrow returned to her quiver. She stepped away from both brothers and sat down on the grass, cross-legged, and waited. "What is she doing?" Vekrin asked. "Why doesn't she finish them?" "The spores," Jinwu said. "She knows exactly what they do." "She's waiting." The medical examiner checked his readings again. "The paralysis will wear off in approximately 10 minutes. But it will be gradual. First, they'll regain feeling in their extremities. Then motor control will slowly return, starting from the core and moving outward. She's giving them a chance," Taiheo realized. "She's letting them recover so they can fight." Why would she do that? Vekrin didn't understand. "Because she wants them to know they lost fairly," Jinwu said. "She could kill them now while they're helpless. But that wouldn't prove anything. She wants to beat them when they're at full strength." The minutes passed slowly. Yuna sat in the grass, perfectly still, watching the sunrise. Her breathing was steady. Her heart rate on the monitor showed 62 beats per minute. She might have been meditating. She might have been resting. It was impossible to tell. Kelver felt the tingling first. It started in his fingers, then spread to his hands. His toes began to move. Beside him, Thane grunted as sensation returned to his body. They both struggled to stand, their combat exoskeletons assisting them once their muscles began responding again. "She's waiting for us," Thane said. His voice was rough with anger and something else. "Fear, maybe. She could have killed us. She wants a real fight," Kelver said. He picked up his plasma rifle, checked its charge. "Then we'll give her one." Yuna stood up slowly. She didn't draw her bow. She didn't reach for her knife. She just stood there, watching them, waiting for them to make the first move. "This is it," Vekrin said in the command center. "This is where we see if she's truly as good as we think, or if she's just been lucky." Kelver raised his rifle and fired. The plasma bolt screamed across the clearing, bright as a small sun. Yuna was already moving. She had seen his shoulder tense a fraction of a second before he pulled the trigger, had calculated the angle and speed of his aim. She rolled left, and the plasma bolt scorched the ground where she had been standing. Thane fired from the other side. Yuna jumped, twisted in mid-air, and the second bolt passed beneath her feet. She landed in a crouch, pulled her bow, knocked an arrow, and released in one continuous motion. The arrow struck Kelver's rifle, right where the power cell connected to the barrel. The rifle exploded in his hands, not violently, but enough to make him drop it and stumble backward. "She hit the weak point," a technician breathed. the exact point where the weapon is most vulnerable. Thane kept firing, but Una was like water flowing around rocks. She moved in ways that seemed impossible, reading his shots before he made them, using the terrain and the morning light to her advantage. The sun was rising behind her, and every time Thane tried to aim, he had to squint against the glare. Another arrow. This one struck Thane's exoskeleton at the knee joint. The armor cracked, and the servomotor seized. His leg locked up, throwing him off balance. He fell, cursing, trying to rip the damaged armor off. Kelver charged at her, abandoning his rifle, drawing a combat blade instead. He was fast, incredibly fast, his exoskeleton giving him speed that should have been impossible to counter. But Una didn't try to match his speed. She watched his pattern. 3 steps, then a slash. 2 steps, then a thrust. He was trained, disciplined, following forms that had been drilled into him for centuries. And that was his weakness. He was predictable. Una sidestepped his slash, ducked under his thrust, and drove her knife into the control panel on his back. Sparks flew. The exoskeleton went dead. Kelver stumbled, suddenly carrying 200 pounds of dead weight. He tried to shrug it off, but Una was already behind him. She swept his legs out from under him. He crashed to the ground, and she pressed her knife to his throat. Thane had freed himself from the damaged armor and was raising his rifle again. But Una already had an arrow pointed at his head. They were frozen in that moment. A perfect stalemate, except it wasn't a stalemate. Everyone watching knew it. Una could have killed them both already. She had won. "It's done," Una said. The command center erupted in chaos. Technicians shouted to each other, checking readings, confirming what they had just heard. Lord Vikrin stood frozen, his 4 arms hanging limp at his sides. Everyone had heard those 2 words clearly through the audio feed. Simple, quiet, final. It's done. Una's voice was soft, almost gentle, but it carried the weight of absolute certainty. The kind of certainty that came from knowing you had won before the fight even began. In the clearing, Kelver lay on his back with a knife pressed to his throat. He could feel the cold metal against his skin. One small movement from the human girl, and he would die. After 300 years of war, after commanding armies and destroying worlds, he would die in a forest, killed by someone he had dismissed as weak. "You can speak," he said. His voice was hoarse. "You can talk." Una nodded slightly. A knife didn't move. Her eyes stayed locked on Thane, who still had his rifle half raised, but hadn't fired. He couldn't fire. If he shot Una, her blade would cut his brother's throat in the same instant. He knew it. Everyone knew it. Why didn't you before? Kelver asked. Una's expression didn't change. Didn't need to. 3 words. That was all. But they said everything. She hadn't spoken because words weren't necessary. The hunt spoke for itself. The 5 dead targets spoke for themselves. Her precision spoke for itself. "You used the paralytic spores," Thane said slowly, lowering his rifle slightly. "You could have killed us then, while we couldn't move. But you waited. Why?" "Had to be fair," Una said. Her voice was barely above a whisper, but in the silent clearing, it carried perfectly. Fair? Kelver almost laughed, but the knife at his throat reminded him not to. There's no fairness in war. There's only survival. Not war, Una said. Justice. The word hung in the air between them. Justice, not revenge. Though everyone knew about Tarsus 4, not sport, like the hunts they had enjoyed. Justice, cold and measured and absolutely certain. Thane slowly set his rifle on the ground. He raised his 4 arms in surrender. What happens now? Council wanted you alive, Una said. For trial. And if we resist? Kelver asked. Yuna's knife pressed a fraction harder against his throat. Not enough to cut, just enough to make her point clear. Don't. In the command center, Vikram finally found his voice. Send the extraction team. Now, before something changes. Sir, Taiho said carefully, I don't think anything is going to change. She has complete control of the situation. That's what concerns me. Vekrin watched the screen with an expression that was hard to read. She's been in that forest for 3 days. She's killed 5 targets and captured 2 more. All by herself. All without speaking until this moment. Do you understand what that means? That humans are better hunters than we thought? Jinwoo offered. No. Vekrin's voice was quiet. It means we've been underestimating them for decades. Maybe centuries. We saw them as diplomats, traders, builders. Useful allies, but not dangerous ones. We were wrong. The extraction team arrived within 20 minutes. 6 armed Quellan soldiers in full combat gear, expecting a fight or at least a tense situation. What they found was Kelver and Thane sitting calmly on the ground, their hands secured with vine rope that Yuna had made herself. Yuna sat a few meters away, eating something that looked like dried fruit from her pack. Secure the prisoners, the team leader ordered. His soldiers moved forward cautiously, weapons ready, but neither Kelver nor Thane resisted. They looked defeated in a way that had nothing to do with physical restraint. Something in their eyes had changed. The confidence was gone. The arrogance was gone. Only resignation remained. The team leader approached Yuna carefully. You did good work here. The council will want to speak with you. Yuna nodded. She stood up, brushed dirt from her clothes, and shouldered her pack. She looked tired now, for the first time. The adrenaline was fading, and the exhaustion of 3 days in a hostile forest was catching up with her. Are you injured? The team leader asked. Yuna lifted her left arm slightly. There was a burn mark on her shoulder from where one of the plasma bolts had grazed her. During the fight. Not serious, but it would need treatment. Medical will look at that when we get back to the platform. They walked back through the forest together. The extraction team surrounded the prisoners, but they kept glancing at Yuna. She walked slightly apart from everyone else, moving through the trees with the same fluid grace she had shown during the entire hunt. Even exhausted, even injured, she moved like someone who belonged in the wild. When they emerged from the forest, the sun was high in the sky. The platform was crowded with people. Word had spread about what happened. Technicians, soldiers, support staff, everyone wanted to see the human who had accomplished what entire teams couldn't. Lord Vekrin was waiting at the platform entrance. He stood tall, formal, his golden armor gleaming in the sunlight. When Yuna approached, he did something that shocked everyone present. He bowed. Not a small nod of acknowledgement, but a deep, formal bow that Quellans only gave to those they considered equals or superiors. On behalf of the Quellan Empire, Vekrin said, I apologize. I underestimated you. I underestimated your people. It was arrogant and foolish, and 5 more of my people died because I delayed by questioning the council's choice. Yuna looked at him for a long moment. Then she bowed back, just as formally. No words. The gesture said enough. Your shoulder needs treatment, Vekrin said, straightening up. Our medical facilities are excellent. While you're being treated, I'll file the mission report. I assume you'll want to leave Veridax Prime as soon as possible? Yuna nodded. She looked back at the forest one last time, her expression unreadable. Then she followed a medical technician toward the treatment center. Taeho, and Jingwoo watched her go. She spoke, Taeho said. After all this time, she actually spoke. She spoke when she needed to, Jinwoo corrected. When the job was done. Not before. Why do you think that is? Jingwoo considered the question. Because words are a commitment. Silence is a shield. She learned that when she was 8 years old, hiding in that bunker on Tarsus 4. If she had made a sound, she would have died. So she learned to communicate through action instead of words, to show instead of tell. And now? Taiho asked. Now the galaxy knows what humans can do when we stop talking and start acting. The medical examination took an hour. The burn was treated. Yuna was given nutrients and hydration, and she was cleared for travel. When she emerged from the medical center, she found Vekrin waiting for her again. The council has already received my report, he said. They're pleased with the outcome. The prisoners will face trial, and justice will be served. He paused. They've also asked me to extend an offer to you. The Interspecies Council needs skilled trackers and hunters for various missions across the galaxy. They're offering you a permanent contract position. Good pay, your choice of assignments, and full support. Yuna pulled out her slate and charcoal. She wrote quickly and showed it to Vekrin. Need time to think. Of course. Take all the time you need. The offer stands. Vekrin hesitated, then added, I watched all the footage from your hunt. Your traps, your tactics, your patience. Everything. I have one question, if you're willing to answer. Yuna tilted her head slightly, waiting. The paralytic spores. You could have used a lethal poison. You've already demonstrated you know which plants are deadly. But you chose paralysis instead, giving them a chance to recover and fight. Why? You said it was about fairness, but I think there's more to it. Yuna wrote on her slate again. They needed to know they lost to a human. Not to luck, not to tricks, to skill, to patience, to someone they thought was weak. Vekrin read the words twice. Then he nodded slowly. I understand. It wasn't just justice for your family. It was justice for your entire species, proving that we were wrong to dismiss you. Yuna didn't confirm or deny. She just shouldered her pack and walked toward the transport ship that would take her off the planet. Behind her, the platform fell silent as people watched her go. The small human girl who spoke not a word till the hunt was over. The girl who had rewritten the galaxy's understanding of what humans could do. As the transport lifted off, Taiho stood beside Jinwoo at the observation window. Do you think she'll take the council's offer? Eventually, Jinwoo said. But not yet. She needs time. 3 days in that forest, 5 kills, 2 captures. That takes a toll, even on someone as controlled as Yuna. What do you think she'll do? Jinwoo smiled slightly. Rest, recover, and when she's ready, she'll hunt again. Because that's what humans do. We find what seems impossible, and we make it possible. We find what seems invincible, and we prove it's not. One patient step at a time. The transport disappeared into the purple sky, carrying Yuna away from Veridax Prime, but her legend stayed behind, spreading through the command center, through the military channels, through the networks that connected the galaxy. Within days, every species knew the story. Within weeks, military academies were studying the footage. Within months, humanity's reputation had changed. They were no longer just diplomats and builders. They were hunters. Patient, precise, and absolutely terrifying when they needed to be. And it all started with one girl who learned that silence could be the most powerful weapon of all. 6 months had passed since Veridax Prime. 6 months since Yuna walked out of that forest and changed everything. The galaxy was different now, though most people couldn't point to exactly how. It was subtle, like the shift in air pressure before a storm. The way other species looked at humans had changed. The way they spoke to humans had changed. There was respect now, but also a kind of careful wariness. The footage from Yuna's hunt had become required viewing at 17 different military academies across 4 sectors. Tactical analysis classes studied her traps. Psychology departments debated her methods. Medical schools examined how she used local biology as weapons. Everyone had an opinion about the silent human girl who had done the impossible, but Una herself had disappeared. After leaving Veridax Prime, she had gone somewhere quiet, somewhere away from questions and attention and people who wanted to study her like a curious specimen. She had taken the Council's offer seriously, but hadn't given them an answer yet. She needed time. Time to process. Time to rest. Time to decide what came next. She chose a small human colony on the edge of settled space. A place called Haven's Rest, where people went when they wanted to be left alone. The colony was tiny, maybe 300 people, most of them farmers or craftspeople. They didn't ask questions. They didn't care about fame or reputation. They just lived their quiet lives under an orange sun. Una rented a small cabin at the edge of the settlement. She spent her days helping with harvests, repairing equipment, and walking through the nearby hills. She didn't talk much, but people got used to that. They learned to read her gestures, her expressions. They learned that silence didn't mean unfriendly. It just meant quiet. One evening, a transport ship landed at the colony's small port. This was unusual. Haven's Rest didn't get many visitors. The colonists gathered curiously as 3 people stepped off the ship. 2 men and a woman, all human, all wearing council uniforms. Taiho spotted Una in the crowd and smiled. "There you are. We've been looking for you." Una raised an eyebrow. She pulled out her slate. "Found me." "What do you want?" "To talk," Jinwoo said. "And to introduce you to someone." The woman stepped forward. She was young, maybe 19, with short hair and nervous energy that made her bounce slightly on her toes. "I'm Nari," she said. "I'm a cadet at the Interspecies Tactical Academy. I've watched your footage maybe 100 times. I wrote my thesis on your hunting patterns." She paused, took a breath. "I want you to teach me." Una stared at her for a long moment. Then she wrote, "Why?" "Because you're the best," Nari said simply. "Because you proved that humans don't have to be stronger or faster. We just have to be smarter, more patient, more precise. I want to learn how to do what you do." "Not just her," Taiho said. "The Council has received requests from 47 different cadets and junior officers. All human, all wanting to learn from you. They want to understand your methods." Una shook her head and wrote, "Can't teach that. Not in a classroom." "We're not talking about a classroom," Jinwoo said. "We're talking about field training. Real missions. You lead, they follow and learn. The Council is willing to fund a full program. They're calling it the Precision Hunter Initiative." Una looked at the 3 of them, then at Nari, who was practically vibrating with hope. She wrote, "Why should I?" "Because it matters," Nari said. "Because what you did on Veridax Prime wasn't just about catching criminals. It was about showing the galaxy who we are, what we're capable of. And if you don't teach others, if that knowledge stays with you alone, then it dies when you do. But if you share it, if you train others, then humanity becomes stronger, better, safer." It was a good argument. Una had to admit that. She looked down at her slate, thinking. Finally, she wrote, "One condition." "Name it," Jinwoo said. "No publicity. No media. No fame. Just training." "Done," Taiho said immediately. "The Council wants results, not propaganda." Una nodded slowly. She gestured toward her cabin. "Come inside. We'll talk details." The training program started small. Just Nari at first, learning the basics in the hills around Haven's Rest. Una taught her how to read terrain, how to identify useful plants, how to move through wilderness without leaving traces. She taught her that hunting wasn't about speed or strength. It was about understanding. Understanding your environment. Understanding your target. Understanding yourself. Nari struggled at first. She was used to action, to doing things quickly. Yuna had to teach her patience, which was the hardest lesson of all. One day, after Nari failed to spot an obvious animal trail for the third time, she sat down in frustration. I'm not good at this. I try to see what you see, but I can't. Yuna sat down beside her. She pulled out her slate and wrote, You're looking, not seeing. What's the difference? Yuna pointed at the forest around them. She wrote, Looking is active. You search for specific things. Seeing is passive. You let everything come to you. The forest tells stories. The broken branch says an animal passed here. The disturbed leaves say it was heavy. The scratch marks say it has claws. You don't look for these things. You see them because you're not trying too hard. Nari read the words twice. Then she closed her eyes, took a deep breath, and opened them again. This time she didn't search. She just looked around naturally, letting her eyes move where they wanted. And slowly, the forest started making sense. The patterns became clear. The story revealed itself. I see it, she whispered. I see the trail. Yuna nodded. She wrote, Now you're learning. After 3 months, more students arrived. 5 at first, then 10, then 20. The program grew larger than anyone expected. The council provided a proper training facility on Haven's Rest, with classrooms and equipment and simulation rooms. But Yuna spent most of the time outside, in the real world, teaching real skills. She taught them how to make traps from natural materials, how to identify poisons and antidotes, how to calculate angles and distances without tools, how to predict behavior based on biology and psychology, how to use silence as both a shield and a weapon. But the most important lesson was always the same: patience. Wait, watch, learn. Only act when you're certain. Why don't you talk during training? One student asked. His name was Minnow, and he was frustrated by Yuna's constant silence during field exercises. Yuna wrote, You learn better when I don't talk. You have to figure things out yourself. I can tell you how to make a trap, but you won't really understand until you try and fail a few times. Words are shortcuts. Shortcuts skip understanding. But it would be faster if you just explained everything, Minho argued. Fast isn't always better, Nari said. She had become Yuna's unofficial assistant, helping translate her methods for newer students. Yuna taught me that. If you learn something fast, you forget it fast. If you learn it slow, through trial and error, it stays with you forever. The program continued for 2 years. Hundreds of students passed through, learning the skills that Yuna had mastered through trauma and necessity. Most of them would never be as good as her, but that wasn't the point. The point was that the humanity now had trained hunters and trackers who understood precision and patience, who could handle situations that required subtlety instead of force. The galaxy noticed. Missions that used to require large teams now succeeded with just a few precision-trained humans. Problems that seemed impossible to solve quietly got resolved with minimal fuss. The reputation grew, slowly but steadily. Humans became known for exactly what Yuna had demonstrated on Veridax Prime: the ability to wait, watch, and strike with perfect accuracy when the moment was right. Lord Vikran visited Haven's Rest once during this time. He came quietly, without announcement, and asked to speak with Yuna privately. They met in her cabin, sitting across from each other with tea between them. I wanted to thank you, Vikran said. Not just for Veridax Prime, but for this. He gestured toward the training facility, visible through the window. You could have kept your skills to yourself. You could have become famous, wealthy. Instead, you chose to teach. To make your entire species stronger. Una wrote, not out fame, about survival. Galaxy is dangerous. Humans need every advantage. It's more than that, Vekrin said. You're changing how other species see humanity. When I first met you, I thought humans were soft, weak. I was wrong, and you proved it. But you didn't do it through bragging or threats. You did it through demonstration, through quiet, undeniable competence. That's powerful. Una considered this. Then she wrote, what do Quellans think now? We think humans are patient predators. We think you're dangerous in ways we didn't understand before. We think underestimating you is a fatal mistake. Vekrin sipped his tea. We also think you're valuable allies. The kind of allies you want to keep happy. Good, Una wrote. That was the point. On the 3rd anniversary of Veridax Prime, the Council held a ceremony. They wanted to honor Una publicly, give her medals and recognition. She refused, but she agreed to speak briefly to the Council Assembly via hologram, mainly because Taiho asked nicely, and she owed him several favors. The assembly hall was filled with representatives from dozens of species. Thousands of beings watching, waiting to hear from the legendary Silent Hunter. Una's hologram appeared at the podium, small and quiet and utterly calm. I don't like speeches, she said. Her voice was soft but clear. So I'll be brief. 3 years ago, I hunted 7 criminals on Veridax Prime. People call it impossible. It wasn't. It was just patient. Everything I did, any human could learn to do. That's what matters. Not that I'm special, but that we're all capable. Every human. Every species. If you're willing to watch, wait, and work, you can accomplish anything. Thank you. She disconnected before anyone could ask questions. But her words spread across the galaxy, faster than any news report. Simple words. Humble words. But they carried a message that everyone understood. Humans were not to be underestimated. Not now. Not ever. Back on Haven's Rest, Una stood at the edge of a cliff, looking out at the orange sunset. Nari approached quietly and stood beside her. The council says your speech is already the most watched address in their history, Nari said. Una shrugged. Don't you care? You're famous now. Like really famous. Una pulled out her slate. Fame doesn't matter. Work matters. Teaching matters. Making humans stronger matters. You did that. You really did. Nari smiled. Because of you, there are now 300 trained precision hunters. Because of you, humanity has a reputation for being patient and dangerous. Because of you, no one dismisses us anymore. Una wrote, not because of me, because of what I represent. Every human has this potential. I just showed it first. They stood in silence for a while, watching the sun disappear below the horizon. The sky turned deep purple, then black. Stars appeared, thousands of them, each one representing worlds and species and possibilities. What will you do now? Nari asked. Keep training students? Una nodded, then added on her slate. And sometimes hunt. When the council needs someone quiet, someone precise, someone who knows how to wait, will you always be silent? During hunts, I mean. Una smiled slightly, which was rare enough that Nari noticed. She wrote, silence isn't empty. It's listening, learning, preparing. Words come when the work is done. Not before. That should be the program motto, Nari said. Maybe it should. They walked back toward the training facility together. 2 humans under an alien sky, carrying the weight of a changed galaxy on their shoulders. But it didn't feel heavy. It felt right. It felt like purpose. Behind them, in the darkness, the forest whispered its secrets. And somewhere in that forest, In forests across 100 worlds, humans were learning to listen, learning to watch, learning to wait, learning that the greatest weapon wasn't always the loudest one. Sometimes it was the silence before the strike, the pause before the action, the patient certainty that comes from knowing exactly when and how to move. That was humanity's true strength, and Yuna had shown them all how to use it. The galaxy would never forget the human girl who spoke not a word until her precision in the hunt had proven everything that needed proving. And they would never underestimate humanity again.